I really do want to thank you and welcome you to the show and to this interview. Um, wow. The short history of the long road is just, it is almost a life-changing film, I think.
Thank you so much.
And I'm not just blowing smoke here. I went into this thinking, well, I just saw a couple of, really raw independent movies, and although they made some really good choices, and I understand, with not having a lot of money, how hard it is to make a quality film. But boy, yours just blew me away. Just blew me away.
I really appreciate that.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. You were born in Paris?
I was actually born in New York, and then I moved to Paris when I was 2, and then grew up there. So I grew up speaking English at home and French at school. And then I moved back to the US for college to New York, and then have stayed here ever since. But home is still in France, but New York more and more feels like.
What brought on your love of film? Was there a particular moment, a particular film that spoke to you and said, gee, I've got to do this?
I always loved photography. That was sort of what drew me into film in the first place. And thought for a long time that I would be a cinematographer, a DP, and was making short films with my friends all through high school, and started a movie club. And then when I started working in film, I just realized more and more that actually I was a director, and met Kaylin Yatsko, who shot The Short History of the Long Road and has shot everything I've directed over the last 8 years, when we met in film school in Prague. And we started our production company together, and that was sort of what led me to fully make movies as a full-time job.
When I was a kid, back in the days of silent movies, I fell in love with movies with a little French film called The Red Balloon.
That's one of my favorites.
That spoke to me on so many levels, and said, gee, how did they do this? I started to ask questions in my head. Was there that film for you?
There was actually, that's not true. There was one movie, Monsoon Wedding, Mira Nair's movie, played at a little movie theater around the corner from my school continuously for a year. It just kept getting picked up over and over again, and I just kept going back to see it. And there was something about that movie that just opened up such a world to me. She's one of my favorite directors, and it really was a way for me to travel in a way that was just very inspiring. And so
it lends to the imagination. It builds a curiosity in young filmmakers, and I think I have a lot of students that watch and listen to this show, and Monsoon Wedding is one of those films that everybody should watch, because it is just a perfect film.
I couldn't agree more.
That, and of course, the French gave us Mr. Hulot's Holiday, which is one of my favorite comedies of all time too. So, but let's take a short history of the long road ourselves. And how did you come up with this idea? Is it a little bit autobiographical?
It's autobiographical in the sense that in a couple different ways, I guess. I did not grow up living out of a van, but growing up between two cultures, and growing up in a family that was in a country that, we chose to move to France. We were expats. And that was something that completely shaped my life,
Mm.
right? And I think there's something for me about when you're becoming an adult, you're you're the product of decisions that your parents made, and you sort of never end up completely throwing away your entire upbringing,
Mm.
but you also never completely follow in the footsteps of your parents either. You're sort of picking and choosing as you go, and that to me really feels like what growing up and becoming your own person feels like. And so that was what I wanted to explore in this movie. And I've always loved road trips, and I've always loved road trip movies. But there aren't a lot of them that have a young woman at the center of the story, and there's so many great examples throughout literature and film where there's a young man who sort of strikes out on his own and sets forth into the great unknown. And for a lot of women in road trip films, Thelma and Louise does not end well.
Yeah.
And Agnes Varda's Vagabond doesn't begin well. And so I wanted to tell a story of a young woman who chooses to embrace the road for herself. And not only because that's how she grew up, but even after she's had a taste of what life off the road is like, she makes that decision for herself. So that's sort of where a lot of that came from, and exploring grief in a way that in a lot of films didn't feel like it was, there was sort of like the classic, the coughing blood into the handkerchief, where you sort of
The foreshadowing of, yeah.
And there's this sort of management of the audience expectations in a way that in real life, it, and this had been my personal experience when I was writing the film, was sort of, it's so unexpected, it turns your whole world upside down, and then you're left to pick up the pieces and make sense of it. And so I wanted to show that in a movie.
Well, there's something, if we were to dissect this, if this were film school, there's something very much about the hero's journey in this, that Joseph Campbell type, but it applies to a woman. It is not Star Wars like, that way, but you are dealing with grief. You are dealing with life-changing moments and decisions on this journey. And she does find, it really is a classic coming of age story.
Yeah, and that's something that I think, we can all, every single person has had to live through that moment, whether or not they, were raised by a single dad living out of a van.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what I was hoping, and what's been really kind of amazing to see as people have been watching the movie, and we've been doing festivals for the last year, and it's about to be out to a much wider audience, is how much people relate to that moment and it's something that we all experience, and so yeah, that's something that was important for me to show, and to really stay entirely in her perspective. And Nola's in every single scene of the movie, and we're really seeing the world through her eyes.
I can't think of a better actress to that you could have chosen to play this. Sabrina Carpenter is drop dead amazing. She's stunning in this performance.
She's a phenomenon. I was just so in awe of her. I mean, every day on set, she totally brought it. She's so hardworking. She completely invested herself in the role and really made it her own. And it was a really wonderful, very collaborative process. And she completely, she's transformed in this movie. I think, a lot of people know her from her Disney days. She was in Girl Meets World, and now she's sort of an international pop star. uh, but her versatility is very much untapped, and so I really think she can play anything.
Yeah, and she proves that, in every scene is just magnetic. But let's talk about the other character in this beautiful, beautiful story, the van. Um,
Yes,
Tell me
our
a
true
little bit of how
star.
you found it and how you chose it.
So the casting for the Hulk was a real journey in and of itself. We really, I mean, when I started writing the script, I reached out to a lot of different people in the van dwelling community. Um, really, just even from a writing standpoint, because I wanted to make sure that, I mean, this was a world that I knew nothing about, and I just really wanted to learn more about it. And one of the people who spoke to me and then ended up becoming like a pillar of this whole project was Ryan Selmayer, who I just cold emailed, and he is sort of the van guru. He him and his wife raised their two kids. Um, and he started a huge van gathering called Descend on Bend that takes place every year. This year, unfortunately, is canceled. But it takes place outside of Bend, Oregon, and I got to go and was just completely blown away by, thousands of people, hundreds of vans, all gathering together and just seeing sort of like the how magical this community is, and how wonderful the people are, and got to meet Caleb and Liz, who are the owners of the Hulk, because Ryan had sold him their van on the condition that he could have it back for when we shot this movie. So we got to borrow it back, and miraculously, it did not break down once, which is, if you know these kinds of vehicles,
Yeah,
that never happens.
they're iffy
So
at best.
yes, exactly. So the van gods were looking down on us. And Ryan drove the van from Seattle all the way to Albuquerque, where we shot, and was, chief van technician, and just ended up being like our van consultant, I think was his official title in the credits. And was just like just such a wonderful presence, and really made sure that whole part of the story was as authentic as possible.
It's interesting that as a director, I mean, you probably never thought in your career that you'd be tending to a van more than your actors in a story.
Definitely, the van ended up being, really the star of the show, especially since none of our actors could actually drive it. It's a stick. It's like a manual, and it's a tank. And Sabrina didn't even have her driver's license at that point.
Mm.
So a lot of movie magic went into that van.
The film itself, though, I mean, audiences need to see this movie for a lot of reasons, but what's the number one reason you have for an audience to watch this film?
I would say right now, honestly, while we're all stuck at home, this is a chance to live vicariously through Nola taking the wheel, and it's a gorgeous road trip movie.
It's beautifully shot. The sequences on the road are just wonderful. You caught sunrises and sunsets. It's just a beautiful love letter to, like Route 66 or any of those places. It just takes you away to an America that we don't see often.
Thanks. That's definitely, very much to Kaylin Yatsko, the cinematographer's credit. She's phenomenal. And New Mexico is truly, they don't call it the land of enchantment for nothing.
Yeah. Just the vastness of it is beautiful. Sacred territory to the Native Americans.
Absolutely.
Danny Trejo, let's talk about Danny, because you don't see Danny play a role like this very often. I mean, and he is just this gentle giant, a teacher, a mystic.
And that is something that was, it ended up being that case for a lot of our cast, which was really wonderful. I mean, Danny, yeah, you're used to seeing him wield a machete, and this is very much not that, but this is also so much closer to who he is as a real person in real life. And similarly with Stephen Ogg, who plays Clint, Nola's dad, he's very well known for Westworld and The Walking Dead, and he's terrifying in a lot of his on-screen roles, but in real life he's a sweet Canadian dad who is currently off the grid camping and is very much related to that role. And Maggie Siff, who plays Cheryl, Nola's mother, is in Billions and in Mad Men. She plays these sort of like very high-powered women who are very much in control. But in real life, she's so down to earth, and she really connected with this part. And so everyone was really able to bring their whole selves, and there was a lot of improv and a lot of collaboration, which was such a gift for me, because people were really able to tailor the roles to fit who they really are, and bring their own sort of personal investment into it.
Are you an actress deep in your heart? Do you empathize with actors?
No, I'm very much behind the camera. But I love actors, and I'm in awe of how they're able to be so vulnerable in front of a camera and really open themselves up. And I loved doing a lot of theater as a kid, and so that is something that has always really stayed with me. But very much staying behind the camera.
In our final kind of moments together here, and again, thank you for this wonderful, insightful interview. I hear, because I've directed a few things in my past, but I hear that directing in a closed space like a car or a van will drive you nuts.
It's tricky. It was tight quarters, but we had such a phenomenal crew. I mean, our 45 person crew was all local in Albuquerque, and they were just so incredible, so hardworking, and it just made every day like just a total, like, absolute sheer joy. And it was a 20-day shoot, but we were able to get everything we needed and more, because everyone was just so invested and so excited to be a part of this project. And so we sort of worked within the confines of our restrictions. And Ryan, to his credit, was also able to really jerry-rig the van, and anytime Kaylin needed to get a shot, he could pop out a window. He was really, it was all hands on deck, which made it possible. I mean, every independent movie especially just feels like a miracle that it exists at all. So it was just a really wonderful experience.
What is your next project? Something along this line, or totally different?
they're all, well, they're always different, and then they're always end up kind of being about the same thing. And so Short History is my second feature. My first feature is an Icelandic movie called Days of Grey that has been sort of eerily foreshadowing this whole pandemic. It takes place in this dystopian future where everyone has to wear a mask every time they leave the house. And has to wash their hands before they come back in. And this new project that I'm writing is sort of also set in this sort of science fiction dystopian world, but it deals with a lot of the same themes of short history of, family and community and what it means like to, take care of each other because that's all that we've got.
It is such a pleasure to meet you and talk with you. Again,
Likewise.
This is one of my favorite films of the year. I bring it up in conversations when people ask me, wait, what should I watch? And it's available. The Short History of the Long Road is available on all VOD platforms. Is it on Blu-ray and DVD as well?
So it'll be available online starting on Tuesday, June 16th. And we'll have a special digital premiere on Monday where we'll be screening the film, and then we'll have a Q&A with the whole cast. And then the DVD and the Blu-ray is available for pre-order at the end of the month.
Oh, terrific. So this is one of those films I think you need to put in your collection. And again, anybody that is going through any kind of crossroads in their lives should really sit and see this film, because it is not about some kid doing kid things. I mean, she is an intelligent, wonderfully played character who emanates this century. She is you've pegged a modern young woman.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.